Order. Thank you. Um, Welcome to the September 30th. Oh, no. Is that today's date? September 30th Reparations Commission meeting. We will start with the roll. So folks can just, if the commission could introduce themselves to the public, then I'll run over the agenda and we'll get started. We'll start with you, Ms. Gwen. Go down.
Okay.
Just introduce yourself.
My name is Gwen Moore. I am a curator at the Missouri Historical Society. I just want to take this time to say this has been a journey. I've been a privilege. It's been a privilege for me to serve on this commission. I want to really pay special tribute to our chair and our co-chair, Kayla Reed and Dr. Ross, who've been really doing a lot of heavy lifting, and our secretary, who's also part of that leadership team, Delishay George. I think they deserve special kudos for the work that they've done. And I also want to recognize all my fellow commissioners, Dr. Cunningham, who's not here, who's really done a lot of hard work, but, also William Foster, Reverend Anthony, Kimberly Franks, all so dedicated, so committed, so sacrificing, that they put a lot into this. And I think that because of all the hard work they do behind the scenes, they don't necessarily get recognized. So here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gwen.
Good evening. I am Delishay George. I've served as the secretary on the commission. It has been a journey, as Ms. Gwen shared, but it has also been really enlightening to hear from community around this issue, as well as others outside of St. Louis. It's been a lot of work, but the work continues. And so I'm hoping that everyone finds their part to play in the continuation of this work. I do thank my fellow commissioners. Some I did not know before this, and so it has really been good to get to know you all and work alongside you. And thank you. Thank you all for attending and for sharing your feedback openly.
Hello, everyone. I am William Foster, a member of the commission, and a member of the city. I'm a resident of the city. I'm not very long-winded, but I would like to thank you all for coming out and continuously showing up and actively participating in these discussions necessary for drafting this report. And I would also like to thank the commissioners for their devotion and commitment to this charge.
Hi, I'm Dr. Will Ross. I'm a professor at Washington University School of Medicine. I serve as vice chair of the commission. It has also been my honor to work with this esteemed group of people here over the past year and a half, tackling some of the hardest issues in this city, bringing it all together, unvarnished, I should say, unvarnished. We've listened and we've not edited what we heard. We took those comments, we said, this is what the community has said, here's what we're going to promote in our report. And so we did listen, and we hope that we're going to present something that will be acted upon in the best interest of this community. So thank everyone for participating, for providing really genuine, thoughtful comments about where the city should be going with regards to reparations. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kayla Reed. She, her pronouns. I am a resident of the city of St. Louis, and I serve as chair of the Reparations Commission. It has been 18 months. Some of you feel like distant family now, and I'm super excited to release this draft. Want to note for the press in the room, this is a draft. These are not the final recommendations. They should not be published as the final recommendations. We are here to present our recommendations this evening and take feedback so that the final report and recommendations be delivered to the public and Mayor Jones. I also would just like to take a moment to thank the commission for one, just applying to be a part of this process and joining this. We have met twice a month, every month, minimally for 18 months. The working groups have met outside of those two meetings. And special, just deep appreciation for that level of commitment. It is volunteer work, so this sits on top of our day jobs and our family obligations. And I'm excited that this is our final meeting because it's over, and that you all will see the labor that we put into presenting what we hope is a powerful reflection of the story of St. Louis that really can be told by race, and recommendations to hopefully move this city forward.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Kevin D. Anthony, and I pastor at Pilgrim Congregation of the United Church of Christ. I too want to echo the sentiments of the commissioners who have already spoken, that it's been an honor to serve beside you and serve on behalf of the city and Mayor Jones. Um, I will tell you that this work was not easy. It was a heavy lift. Sometimes you get into things and you learn more as you go along. And so I've learned a lot, and just want you to know that uh, uh, for those of you who are not aware of the work that has gone in, it's taken truly a commitment to fulfill the obligations that were given to us. And so thank you all for being patient over this time period. And we'll continue to do the work that we've been called to do at this time and in this moment. Blessings to each of you.
Good evening. My name is Kim Franks. I am an attorney in local business. Better. Good evening. My name is Kim Franks. I'm an attorney and local business owner, and I just want to thank you all for coming out this evening and for your steadfastness. When I say your steadfastness, I say the community who has collectively showed up for each and every one of these meetings. And I'm also grateful to Mayor Jones for signing into executive order the commissioning of this work, and also want to extend my gratitude to my fellow commissioners who have just worked diligently, especially those of you who have done some heavy lifting with this draft report and received so kindly my feedback. And so I just echo the sentiment that this is a draft, and each and every one of us here has a heart for justice and to demand what we deserve. So there will never be enough work that we can do to go that far, but just know that we have used the time and resources that we have to deliver the best that we can. And so I hope that you will receive that just as such.
Good evening. I'm David Cunningham. I'm a sociologist at Washington University. First, I apologize for needing to come in a bit late here for this very important meeting. But I'm really pleased to be with you all and grateful to be with you all. I've been grateful throughout these 18 months to be able to work with my fellow commissioners here. I know I see some familiar faces in the room, and a lot of you have been committed throughout the process. I know there's others on the live stream as well. Like that, I think this whole process, just to reiterate what you've heard many of the other commissioners say, has really taken a community to get to this point. Certainly, we've all worked together. We've worked with a broader body of folks who have lent their expertise and their experience to inform the work that we've done, to inform the conclusions that we've reached. And most importantly, we have worked with you all, and we've heard from you all. And it's been a difficult process, and it's a large challenge to undertake a project like this. But we've been really grateful to be able to do that with you and to be able to present these draft findings tonight. So thank you.
Great. So we're going to give a presentation on the draft report recommendation. We keep emphasizing the word draft because tonight we want to take feedback from you all. I want to, say that we're taking this feedback because over the next week, what we are going to do is integrate that feedback, comments that we receive, emails that we receive for those who are listening. This is very important that we get all feedback as soon as possible so that the report working group, which is Dr. Ross, Professor Cunningham, and myself, can steward us to completion with this report. We promised a 100-page report. It's probably going to be 115 pages, but worth every extra page to ensure that we tell a robust story to meet the requirements of the mandate laid out in Executive Order 75. And just do want to communicate a thank you to the public, to all the contributors who helped us get to this point. So let's dive in. So overview of the recommendation. Executive Order 75, and I'll read every slide. It's about 20. This is hard copied from the report, but it is a draft. So if you take pictures, please don't post them and treat them as though this is the final version. It is not the final version. Executive Order 75 requires the commission to engage thoughtfully on recommendations to address the race-based harms outlined in this report. For many months, we engaged and struggled in public around themes of eligibility, scale, and scope. Before presenting the recommendations, we must acknowledge that this commission is a local reparative initiative, and as such, we do not see this report or these recommendations as a replacement for the broader national conversations on reparations. Instead, we view this as a vital complement to those efforts, recognizing that local communities have a unique role to play in addressing historic injustices. Our work is a step toward justice, but it must be a part of a larger movement that addresses systemic inequities at every level of society. We encourage continued dialogue and action, not only locally, but across the country to ensure that meaningful reparative justice is achieved for all impacted communities. So we've organized the recommendations really into two groups. The first of those is restitution. So restitution-oriented recommendations are designed to address and reconcile the injustices experienced by those directly harmed. This includes not only individuals who were personally impacted by the targeted harms, but also those who lived in communities where those harms were perpetrated. These measures focus both on the redistribution of resources as well as public recognition of the dignity of those harmed by historical practices and aim to provide direct redress and compensation to restore dignity and opportunities to those affected by systemic inequities. So the second category for recommendation is policy-oriented. Policy-oriented recommendations are aimed at preventing the repetition of these harms in the future. By addressing structural issues, these proposals focus on long-term change through policy reforms that ensure these injustices are not repeated. The goal is to create lasting systemic improvements that safeguard vulnerable communities and promote equity for future generations. We discussed in multiple meetings up until this point two questions that we feel like would shape the conversation on recommendations. And those are lineage and residency. Our commission carefully debated these issues and ultimately reached the following conclusion regarding lineage. The executive order that guides our work set out that we must assess the history of slavery, segregation, and other race-based harms in the city of St. Louis, explore the present-day manifestations of that history. In our reflection of that mandate, we voted that reparations should be provided to those who can trace their ancestry to enslaved people and Black residents who have been disproportionately impacted by systemic racism in St. Louis. The second category is geography and residency. As a local commission, we acknowledge the challenges posed by the region's fragmentation in formulating our recommendations. Many Black families, for various reasons detailed in this report, have relocated outside of the city of St. Louis in pursuit of greater stability and opportunity. Often those moves were made under pressure or as a direct response to the harms discussed in the report. Therefore, this commission recommends that any reparations be extended to Black individuals who can provide proof of past or present residence, regardless of their current location. One of the things we agreed upon is that, like many things that seek to respond to previous harms, there must be something permanent to ensure that work continues. So we are proposing the establishment of a permanent city reparations committee. Not this committee, different committee, but of a permanent people. So this committee should be comprised of members with appropriate experience and expertise to act on a dual charge. One is to carry out the calculations required to determine the scale of reparation payments and initiatives outlined in this report, drawing on the parameters established in this report. And two, to monitor the progress and execution of the recommendations outlined in the report. So so now we're going to get into like the hard recommendations. We've broken this down around recognition, restitution, and policy. There are 3 recognition recommendations. The first is a public apology. We strongly recommend that the City of St. Louis issue a formal public apology to acknowledge and take responsibility for the historic and systemic harms inflicted on Black residents as detailed in the report. We believe that the public apology is a critical first step in a process of reparative justice, offering a formal recognition of the pain, suffering, and disenfranchisement that has persisted for generations. It doesn't just serve as an acknowledgement, but a commitment to a more just future, and it's essential to rebuilding the trust between the city and its Black residents. The second recommendation that falls under the recognition category is the adoption of a formal history acknowledging racial harms. So we also strongly recommend that the City of St. Louis adopt a formal, comprehensive history that explicitly acknowledges the racial harms inflicted upon Black residents throughout its history. This history should include detailed account of systemic injustices such as segregation, redlining, economic disenfranchisement, and other forms of racial discrimination that have impacted Black communities. By embedding this narrative into the city's official record, we ensure that these harms are neither forgotten nor minimized. And the third recommendation for recognition is cultural preservation and memory. So we recommend to the city that they fully fund initiatives to preserve Black cultural and historic landmarks in St. Louis, establish a memorial or museum dedicated to honoring the legacy of enslaved people and acknowledging the city's role in perpetuating systemic racism, and support cultural programs that celebrate Black art, history, and contributions to St. Louis. So the next set are redistribution recommendations. The St. Louis City Reparations Commission recommends general cash payments to descendants of enslaved people and Black residents impacted by discrimination. We recommend providing direct cash payments to individuals who can trace their ancestry to enslaved people and Black residents who have been disproportionately impacted by systemic racism in St. Louis. Develop a transparent and equitable system for determining eligibility and the amount of compensation based on historic harm and ongoing economic disparities. Ensure that cash payments are delivered in a way that supports wealth building opportunities, and offer tax exemptions or credits to recipients of reparation payments to prevent financial penalties related to their compensation. The recommendation redistribution 2 is targeted cash payments to Black residents subjected to specific historic harms. So the commission, in addition to recommendation around redistribution that we just listed, is to provide additional cash payments for reparations of up to $25,000, but only for designated communities with recently documented direct harm. These would include former residents or direct descendants of residents of Mill Creek Valley, Pruitt-Igoe, McCreetown. So now we'll get into issue area recommendations that are based off the subjects that we outlined in the report. So the first issue area is housing and land. Regarding restitution, we recommend that the city establish a fund to provide housing grants to descendants of enslaved people and residents of historically redlined neighborhoods. Launch programs that provide financial assistance for homeownership, home repair, and property tax relief in historically disadvantaged areas. Allocate land for affordable housing developments, specifically benefiting Black residents impacted by discriminatory practices. Policy. Offer a grant for Black homeowners in historically disinvested neighborhoods that provide resources for essential home repairs and property tax relief. This initiative aims to mitigate displacement and promote community stability, helping to preserve long-term homeownership and strengthen local neighborhoods. The second is neighborhood and built environment. So these are very policy focused. Invest in the revitalization of neighborhoods that have been historically underfunded due to segregation and systemic racism. Increase access to public parks, recreational areas, and green spaces in predominantly Black neighborhoods. And ensure environmental justice by addressing pollution and health hazards in impacted communities. Next is education. For restitution, we propose creating scholarships and educational grants for descendants of enslaved people and Black students from underserved areas. In policy, provide funding for educational equity programs such as after-school tutoring, mentorship, and technology access in predominantly Black schools. Support the development of African American history curriculum in public schools, ensuring that students are educated about the local history of racial injustice. Again, to adopt an official history of the city of St. Louis and establish a free Wi-Fi program in St. Louis. For public health, for restitution, establish a community health fund to address racial disparities in healthcare access and outcomes for Black residents. For policy, expand access to free or low-cost healthcare services for low-income residents, focusing on health equity. Increase funding for community health centers in Black neighborhoods to establish dedicated centers that specifically address intergenerational trauma and stress related to systemic racism. These centers should provide culturally competent mental health services, including counseling, support groups, educational workshops, while also offering comprehensive healthcare services, preventative care, and wellness programs tailored to the unique needs of the community. Collaboration with local organizations such as AFINIA, the TEEV Restorative Justice Movement will ensure effective outreach and support for residents. The next is economic justice and wealth creation. So this really focuses on policy because the restitution was outlined in the redistribution recommendations stated earlier on. So, fund Black-owned businesses through grants, low-interest loans, and technical support program. Launch job training and entrepreneurship programs aimed at reducing unemployment and economic disparities in Black communities. This is in addition to the cash payments that we talked about. Criminal justice and policing. For restitution, we seek to establish a reparations fund for victims of police violence, over-policing, and incarceration in Black communities, starting with a baseline minimum of $25,000 for each documented incident. For policy, to implement community-driven alternatives to policing, such as restorative justice programs and mental health crisis response team, and also increase civilian oversight and accountability of the St. Louis Police Department, particularly in cases of misconduct against Black residents. And then the last section is state violence and legal reform. So the restitution acknowledge and address the long history of state-sanctioned violence, including police brutality and the criminalization of Black people within both the official apology and formal history. Expunge the criminal records of individuals convicted of offenses related to systemic racial injustice, such as drug-related offenses. And policy, advocate for legal reforms that reduce mass incarceration and support community-led safety initiatives. So all of this costs, and all of this is a proposal. So people will ask the question, what are potential sources for this restitution? Obviously, the policy can be driven in this room by the Board of Aldermen, but there are potential funding sources. So the RAM Settlement Fund, which is $180 million, tax profit from the sales tax of marijuana in the city of St. Louis, unspent ARPA money, and the general budget. So at this time, I think we'll open up with comments from the public, and then we'll come back to the commission for any comments. Reverend Anthony will take time one last time. We're going to give you 3 minutes. If you expire your 3 minutes and you need to come back for a different reparations commission moment, that's fine. We want to get as much information as possible from the audience tonight. If you need us to pull up a particular slide or you have questions, we won't start your time until we clarify questions that you have, and then we'll take your testimony. Does that make sense? So please start with any questions you have. We'll answer those questions, and then we'll take your official statement or testimony on the report recommendations. And we'll begin with who's ever ready. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Let us know your name and neighborhood. We, there are people watching, so it's helpful to use the mic.
First, I do appreciate the committee to the utmost, but I feel, is this a question period?
Yeah, we'll take your questions first before your statement.
Why did it take so long? I need to wait till the statement period comes because I have more.
No, you can do them together. It's just we want to answer any questions before you give your statement. But if you have a statement and you're prepared to give it, you can share it.
Okay. The question that I had on the screen was about $25,000. There was a news reporter that asked me what can make up for the atrocities that was placed upon my family. Of the 20, I think it was 20,000 families, not 20,000 people, but whatever the number. 12 of 13 members of my family succumbed, had strokes, and early deaths from the atrocities that were placed upon the Mill Creek Valley. That was the beginning of mine. I was born and raised in the Mill Creek Valley at 3433 Pine Street. My return statement to that was that nothing can make up for the deaths of my family. And I call it the family that I never had because my mother and father, my father died at 58, my mother died at 68 after 4 miscarriages. My twin was a miscarriage, all born alive. My oldest sister died at 8 months from kidney failure. Second oldest sister had a stroke at 9 years old and suffered until 32 years old, which paralyzed half of her body. I have photos and records of all of this. My youngest brother died at 41 years old, brain, and there are 2 common causes involved. From the testing, the illegal secret testing of DDT and Agent Orange in the Mill Creek Valley section, without the consideration of when. He said, well, we need to excavate this area so the downtown commercial businesses and the judicial system can connect with the St. Louis University and the amusement center in the main Masonic district.
Sir, could you speak in the mic? I'm so sorry. It's just getting hard to hear you.
It's kind of backwards. Maybe I should go over here. Is that?
Are you wanting to address the commission or?
No, to speak into the mic, it's kind of awkward. I'd like to face the audience. Why don't should I? You can take it out of here. Okay. I went to Vashon. Where was I? Because my mind is racing like Jesse Owens. So the oh yeah, the testing. Yes, it was DDT. As kids, we called it drop dead twice. And I couldn't stand it. And they were spraying twice a week, and sometimes 3 times a week into the Mill Creek area. And the adults were wondering what was happening. What was it? And they said it was spraying for mosquitoes. Well, we didn't have any air conditioning at that time, and we all spent our nights at Camp Jackson Park on Grand and between Pine and Lawton. Um, um, the two main factors in the deaths of my family was cancer, brain, and blood. And even today, as a matter of fact, I just got a bad report. I had to build my life. I just got a bad report on the way down here to this meeting from the doctor's office that my last screen, which was Friday, I have to come back in December. But I'm being treated for the rest of my life. I'm 86 years old, and I've been treated like this. I had 2 bouts with rheumatic fever when I was a small kid in the 1940s. Um, uh, but I'm blessed. I don't have a heart scar from it, but I've been suffering with cancer and many illnesses all of my life. I have to go back into the blood study again, and oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of the name of the medical treatment here. The it's no, it's vein. It's in your bone marrow. I have a bone marrow problem that I've had for years.
Time.
That I'm married to the girl next door, and she's been suffering. She's a retired educator. She's suffered with ITP and all of the different blood and cancerous conditions since 1999, but she was being treated all during her.
Yeah, your time.
My time is.
Yes.
Well, it's just not enough time. Can I come back? Because there's a lot. There's a lot. This is. I'm the only person left in my family of 13, and I'm sick.
Yes,
from
sir. As we mentioned before at the outset, we want to make sure that we have input from everyone, following that time period. If there's sufficient time left, we can come back. But right now, we want to have you adhere to that time limit, please. Thanks.
Okay. Come on, brother.
Thank you, brother. Good evening, everybody. My name is King Asar. I am a community activist and also a local legend when it comes to the health and wellness of this community. I appreciate the brief time that I'm going to take with this esteemed commission. Going through your PowerPoints that you had there, for the most part, I could pretty much take or leave a lot of the things that you have in there, but there was one thing that really stood out to me, and there was something also that was not in there that stood out to me. The one thing that stood out to me was the general cash payments of a one-time payment. Now, I have a slight issue with that, simply because just about every other demographic, cultural background that has had to receive some type of reparations, it has not just been one payment. It has actually been ongoing payments to take care, to repair the issues that have been caused. Have an issue with one-time payment. That's not enough. Second thing that I did not see in there was an anti-Black hate crime bill. And I specify Black crime bill, FBA's Foundational Black Americans. We need a crime bill that is specifically for us, that can also be attributed to the reparations package. Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let me respond to both members, regarding the payments. So that the payments that we alluded to were based on the fact that we realized it would take more time than we would want to really do this actuarial analysis in order to determine the scale of the payment. There were three areas that really stood out, and we felt there could be, we need to show that there would not be any undue delay. And those areas were Mill Creek Valley, Pruitt-Igoe, and McCreetown. And so on the recommendations for redistribution, we spelled out, the chair spelled out that we would develop a transparent and equitable system for determining eligibility and the amount of compensation based on historical harm. So this process has not ended. And I just want you to know we respect what you're saying both. And we wanted to show that, on the outset, we need to do something while we're undergoing the rest of this reevaluation and actuarial analysis. We just didn't want you to say that they haven't done anything. So that's why we put that recommendation in there, sir. We hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gwendolyn Coxhill. I've been living in North St. Louis for 60 years, and I just want to start by saying we're trying to save our recreational center, the old Demetrius Johnson building, and in the ARPA funds, the final rule, the B-sides, I wish you all could look at that. It says people that was most affected by COVID was African-American people, so that money should be going to them in their recreational center and their infrastructure. And infrastructure just doesn't mean potholes. That means the structure and recreational center, if you could look at this, is not for a developer who wants to come in old North St. Louis and develop a building. That's not what the money is for. But I want to piggyback off what the brother said, because I live on the north side of this recreational center. If you walk from the Delmar Divine north, from Delmar and Union, and walk 3 miles all the way through the graveyard to Bayton, if you walk down Kings Highway north, all the way down to the same area, Bayton, if you walk down Grand, all the way north, there is not one restaurant where we can sit down and have a healthy meal. We've been eating garbage for the last 30 years, and that's why so many people died in North St. Louis, because we've been eating garbage. There's no plan for North St. Louis, never have been. And like I told him, I lost my oldest sister, my nephew, and an uncle from COVID. When my nephew was in the basement, shielding himself or separating himself from his family while his kidneys were failing, because that's what he was told to do. There was no kind, and then when he went in, he ended up dying in the hospital. So what I'm saying is that until we come up with a like you said, a long-term plan for North St. Louis, all our schools being closed, our children getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting on the bus stop at 6, and then somebody wants to talk about them falling asleep in class and they not learning anything. They not learning anything. They not falling asleep in class because they're exhausted. And then when they get home at 6 o'clock, they start the same thing over. So I just want to say that I would hope that you all would take a trip to North St. Louis, get on a bus and sort of, before you make this final decision, and see what's going on. Because I said when all these billions get spent, that North St. Louis still gonna look the same. And that's what I believe is gonna happen. Nothing is gonna change. We still can't get a donut and a cup of coffee in the 50 years that I done lived over there. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I'm so sorry, ma'am, before you sit down. You said that you named a recreational center that already exists or that is in progress?
It already exists in the city of St. Louis. It's Yale Center. It was donated to the community in 1968 by the Jewish community. I found the deed here in downstairs, and it said that this recreational center should be used as, this building should be used as a recreational center, and the city is not putting money into it any longer. And I feel like it's 20 office buildings, office spaces in here. Down in the basement, 2 full court basketball courts, 2 handball courts, a boxing ring, an indoor swimming pool, which Sodan High School utilize that swimming for their swimming team, which they no longer can do. At the top of this building is a restaurant, and they used to have weddings. So if the city invests in this, with those ARPA funds, they can recoup that money back into the budget. It won't be a loss. So we want this building revitalized because we used to do aerobics in here, Girl Scout, Boy Scout, Black Repertory Theater used to be in here. So HDC used to have where people used to come in for housing and different things. So this could be a hub. It's right next door to Sodan High School where kids can come, parents getting out of work at 6 o'clock. The kids can come over to this recreational center. It can be a daycare center. It can be a hub for children to stay until their parents pick them up. And I'll leave these last two.
Yes, if you could.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you could,
We'll
we'd
take
like
it.
a copy.
And you can scan it because we're doing a petition.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I actually never introduced myself. I'm James N. Gallagher III of St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a veteran. I just came off the National Honor Flight, and I need to just reiterate. I didn't do research on the city problems. I did research on my family's deaths, and
Yes, sir. Just following protocol. We respect what you're doing, but we do need to follow protocol. And so, as I said, we'll entertain all the other continuing questions. And so, at the end, if there's sufficient time, we will get back with you. So, yes.
All right, Dr. Ross.
Good evening. My name is Chester Asher with the Coalition of STL Kids. First is a question. A lot of what you proposed looks good, but we've seen a lot of things that look good. What do you need from us, from the public, to go from ideas, good ideas, to actual implementation, to people actually receiving the things that you have proposed? What would help in that process to make it actually a reality?
Thank you for that question. My day job is I run an organization that's been working to get us to this point. And so what I would say is, my answer to many questions is that we organize. And so we are approaching, this report comes out at a very interesting time in our city, one of which there are going to be conversations and continued conversations about spending of resources from ARPA to the RAM settlement. We need folks to show up with this report in hand, demanding that this get as much consideration as sort of blanket phrases like economic development of downtown. We need to ensure that folks are meeting with their alders to talk about the policy recommendations and how to translate those to actual board bills that get introduced at the Board of Aldermen. Half of the Board of Aldermen is up for election in 2025, along with the city's mayor and comptroller. And so decision makers have to answer your questions in order to receive your votes around real issues that we are trying to address in this report. And so, in the same way that you come to these meetings, continue to identify other meetings to go to, join and support organizations that are working on this, and also apply pressure. This is going to take pressure. And, I've been a part of organizing now for over a decade. I've seen a few reports come out. The Ferguson Commission report came out. There have been lots of reports with lots of to-dos. And if the people don't do something to make that happen, then those pages sit on, they'll sit in the record that it happened, but that nothing came of it. And so I think that's a great question. And I think the real work is to continue to apply pressure in the same way that we got this executive order. This didn't just come out of the graciousness of one person's heart. It came from people being organized and demanding that this city actually take up this conversation in a structured way. And so as the report comes out, we ask that you distribute it, that you share it, that you amplify it, that you identify what feels true to you, and then work to get that accomplished. And then the other thing that we are hoping for is the permanent establishment of a reparations committee that will release reports and updates on making sure that these initiatives are actually moving to implementation.
And who would be responsible for the permanent establishment of that committee?
That would probably be either legislated through a board bill, or it would sort of established as another commission like ours through an executive order.
But you have the have the ability to effect that kind of change. We want accountability. I've been doing all of this grassroots. I'm a physician. I've been doing this grassroots work for 34 years here in St. Louis. And I just want to see accountability. I'm with you. And so that accountability is going to come from individuals who, you're speaking the truth to power, but we need to really push this. And so we will give you a document. You will say, this has been going on for years. Here's this report coming from a mayoral commission. We want this to happen. This requires a demand.
And maybe if you all could set up, you talk about those areas where people can apply pressure, almost like a calendar or list of ways in which people can consistently do that, because I think sometimes people want it, but they don't know how to necessarily, or where to put pressure in order to make those things happen. So maybe if that could be something the committee takes on, I think that would be helpful. And now to my statement, the things that I would like to add to your report, specifically around education. Again, I'm with the Coalition of STL Kids. Applaud everything that's in there. I would like to add two things. One, I taught for 8 years in the classroom. Teaching was the hardest job I've ever had. It was also the lowest paying job I've ever had. And in our schools, what we expect or what we want teachers to do really goes above and beyond just mere instruction. We're asking for a starting 60, which is at minimum salary of $60,000, and that's not even sufficient. But that's just a starting block, a starting 60 to pay educators in a way that is somewhat commensurate with the value of their work for our kids in our community. Secondly, to fund a position at every single school, and we haven't decided on what the name is, but it's a behavior support position. As a former principal of a school, we knew the kids who were going to get suspended the next month. It wasn't a surprise when Johnny got suspended, because Johnny got suspended last month. And usually you have a few kids and a few families that can really upend the school. And so this position would really case manage and support that family, because oftentimes it's not just because the kid wants to act out. There are issues. We know our kids suffer from trauma. We know our kids suffer from violence. We know, I can't tell you how many kids of my students have seen their fathers murdered. I can't imagine what that does to one's psyche. We know our children suffer with poverty, and we know it affects then how kids show up in school and how they can perform at school. And so these people would actually help not just the kid, but also the families get the resources that they need to really support that kid. And so we're asking for those two things, starting 60 and behavior support personnel at each school, potentially funded by either a special tax, either a special property tax or a special sales tax put on the ballot by the council or by popular referendum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So greetings, my name is Antoine. I hail from the Hamilton Heights community.
How you doing, Antoine?
Greetings to you all. First, I'll have a question and then I'll make a short statement. So my question is, understanding that race is a social construct, who's Black? Like according to the definitions that's going to be used for these recommendations, who would qualify as Black? That's the question.
Yeah. So, as we stated, we are taking this on in two ways. So, the lineage portion speaks to the reparations to be provided to those who can trace ancestry to enslaved people and Black residents who have been disproportionately impacted by systemic racism in St. Louis. And we take this up in twofold. One, to support a larger, robust national conversation on lineage-based reparations. And two, to address that there are non-descendants of American enslaved Black people who've been disproportionately impacted by systemic racism in St. Louis. Now, on last week's call, we talked about this a little bit, that we don't know the scale of that second group at different points in times. The month before, I don't know if you went back to watch that meeting that we recommended, but we talked about a place like St. Louis in comparison to a place like New York, right? New York, this conversation has a much more robust footing because you have many Caribbean people who came over in the 20s, 30s, and so on. Some of the more, prominent folks who have fought for reparations are actually the descendants of immigrants, people from Grenada, people from Trinidad, people from PR, people from Cuba, et cetera. So we think, just based on what we know about migration patterns and settlement realities, is that the majority of those folks are going to be actually lineage-based descendants of those who were enslaved. I don't have a percentage at all, but what we wanted to also make sure of is that because the consequences of enslavement were broad and all-encompassing to Black folks, that those folks also would have redress. Now, the other thing I want to state that I think is really important is we are not offering in the sort of point one on the redistribution. The cash payments we are talking through are, we haven't really thought of a word for it, but they're sort of like equation based, that for different measures of moments of harm, one could, the sort of output of that equation would change depending on if you're the descendant of an enslaved person, plus specific facts like Ms. Gwen, for example, who grew up in Mill Creek Valley, or our brother here who grew up in Mill Creek Valley, that those would be sort of like XYZ variables that go into an output around the total amount. The only controlled offering we've put into that equation that we proposed is the site-based 25,000. The other brackets would need to be worked out by the sort of expert of analysis that would need to come from the ongoing reparations work.
Wow.
Does that answer your question? That was a lot of words, but
I think
trying to
so.
be detailed.
I think so, and I appreciate it. So my statement, I want to start off by congratulating you all for recognizing the need for including lineage-based repair. And I want to congratulate you all. On the way here, rushing here, and I was listening to many things that are tangible and direct, and that's what we needed too. I think that St. Louis Reparations Commission is a model for reparations commissions around the country, mainly because most of the people who have ever graced this commission had a stake in it, being people themselves who are descended from those who were enslaved in the United States. The question of Blackness is running rampant right now. We have everything from politicians, are they Black, are they not Black? It's a social construct. Whereas it concerns Black Americans who can trace our lineage back to the time of slavery, I think that even if we didn't add those other things, saying and other Black people, it would still address the real systemic harms. We have people who have been here a long time, sometimes some from the 60s, most just got here in the last 20 years. I think that it's time for Black Americans who can trace our lineage back to the time of slavery to be singled out, like I see so many other groups singled out specifically for repair. And I think that even if you did leave out the other part about all Black people and left it at lineage base, you would still be able to meet the mandate of the executive order, because Black Americans, we were enslaved because of our race. And through all that atrocities and through all the centuries, we've become an ethnic group. And we've suffered, well, not suffered, but we've heard throughout the decades, as we welcome people from the melanated diaspora over here. We fought for it in the 60s. Let some more melanated people come in. Let some Africans and everybody come in. And many of us, I know this hasn't been everyone's experience, but many of us have ran into the saying, hey, well, I'm not Black, I'm Haitian. Hey, no, I'm not Black, I'm Igbo. they have an identifier. They have a ethnicity that they can call upon. And I just want to see Black Americans, that terminology be used as our ethnicity, to be given respect just like we give respect to a Fulani or anybody like that. Um, but outside of that, I think you all have done a great job. I really appreciate the mayor. Another thing special about St. Louis Reparations Commission uh, is the fact that it was impaneled by executive order. We need to see more of that. That can go all the way, like we're talking about the national level. That could happen on the national level if we apply enough pressure. Yeah. So I think that that's it, and I really appreciate y'all. And peace, power, and reparations.
Thank you, Antoine.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening.
Evening.
Hello.
I'm really just here to chime in and see what's really going on because I have been discriminated against since I was a child. I know what it's like to sit in that closet classroom and be in that room with no windows and have to read coloring books when I want to do education books. I made it out of that situation and I graduated college. Even though I graduated college, they say my degree ain't worth nothing because it was from Extreme Institute by Nelly. Okay? They made the school, but the degree not worth nothing. I can't get a job. Did some other training, a whole lot of other training. It's not worth nothing. I got recommendations. It's not worth nothing. But at the same time, I'm gonna take it back. My granny was born in Bartlett, Texas, 1930. My grandfather was born in Alabama, Mobile, 1926. They migrated to Missouri somehow, some way. I don't know. They both passed away, but I know they migrated. But make a long story short, what I was told that they had they had went through a lot of racism and a lot of discrimination back then. You know, I read in the books all the time. We all have read it. You know, my granny and my grandfather grew up on right on home, 14th and Cass, where everybody used to be at back in the day. Yeah, that's our family. This is all our family. And this is cool that y'all doing this, but this is my question. If we have you leaders like what y'all doing right now, like that y'all involved, how are we going to get the youth to become successful citizens like you are, and like myself, and like the others that standing up for our rights? We supposed to stand up for our rights, but at the same time, every time we go to school, we get discriminated against. You know, it makes us feel unworthy. As far as employment in Missouri and St. Louis, it's a lot of companies out here around that just the downtown area that a lot of people can be working at. There should be training at each one of these companies. There should be some type of volunteer services, and if not, they should get taxed because these are citizens in our community that should be working these jobs, not foreigners and people from out of town taking these jobs from us in these skyscrapers and all that. That's the only way we're gonna change if we train our community to get these jobs and give them a chance to work these jobs, a mentorship. But that's all I got to say. But I'm just glad to be here. So, all right.
Thank you.
And just to reconnect with your testimony to the recommendations. So one, some of the pieces around our grandparents, right? Because my grandparents came from Mississippi and Arkansas. They were born in the 30s. They migrated up here in the 50s. My dad was the first child born in St. Louis from that migration in 56. And so there is part of that story is around creating this official narrative that is accessible to people in the city. You shouldn't have to go to a university library. You shouldn't have to enroll in an African American Studies course to understand how your world as it was as when we were kids existed and why most Black people lived on the North Side and why the North Side looks how it looks now. There are decisions and things that need to be permanently accessible to the public that explain these things. And then second, around the economic justice and wealth creation, two of the policies that we are encouraging is like to fund Black businesses through grants, low interest loans, and technical support program. I think this is very relevant for the moment that we are in when it comes to the ARPA money, because we see a lot of news right now about how money is being spent, what decisions have been made about funding. And I think as we get prepared to go through sort of a soft review of those applications, we should be intentional about ensuring that the dollars that have flowed to St. Louis in a historic amount are reaching communities that have um, suffered and business owners who are interested in expanding to bring in people from the community into those roles. And then also the other policy is around launching job training and entrepreneurship programs. We do have a lot of um, corporations in St. Louis, like uniquely so for a city of our size, that operate a lot of times in the political landscape. They make endorsements, they support candidates with money, they push bills that they want to see passed. And I think equally in sort of thing that they should be responsible for is contributing to the economic stability and wealth building opportunities for people on the policies, because some of these same institutions that are sort of demanding how money be spent, whether it be ARPA money or the soccer money or policies, and are making endorsements of candidates and sort of trying to shape the political realities of a city, are part of some of the historic harm that we talk about in the report. They've been decision makers and funders of the raising of places like Mill Creek Valley and initiatives that have sort of sought to divest from places where Black people lived. And so I think while this report really does focus on sort of the St. Louis City government, it also acknowledges a lot of private actors have played a role in anti-Black racism, contributing to the disparities that we see, and should equally offer public apology for the harms that they've been a part of over the decades that they've existed in the city of St. Louis.
Can you come to the mics?
How can we receive the how can we receive the
report?
The report, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not finished yet. We're working very hard to get it finished, but it'll be out next week. And so hopefully the city will place it on the website for download. We've also secured some funding from a foundation to ensure that we are able to print and distribute reports to the general public so that this is accessible to folks who are interested in knowing what the work of the commission and the recommendations to go forward.
All right, thank you. I
No
mean, the
problem.
presentation, I lost it right there.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you make sure that you download the report and share it as quick as widely as possible?
Will it be on the website of the city of St. Louis?
Jonathan, yes, our Chief Equity Officer of the City of St. Louis is here, and it'll be uploaded to the city website on the reparations page. Yeah, but we'll make sure it's available. The press will have it. It'll be on organizational websites. So
And
if you follow nothing else, you can follow Action St. Louis and we'll put it out.
Action
You'll
St.
have access to it next week.
Okay.
But I'm sure that the city is also going to upload it. I don't know what page it'll be on though, but next week you should be able to just Google St. Louis City Reparations Report and a downloadable link pops up for you to take it with you.
One more quick question. How much money y'all thinking about giving us as far as in a lump sum to people in the community?
So that's a good question. Dr. Ross, you want to take that one?
So in terms of total lump sum, now, so we hadn't. That's why we wanted to really do this with a larger group of people who can do the actuarial analysis, can go through the math and say, let's look at the harms, let's look at all the additional factors that could be part of that harm, and then let's actually come up with a model, a mathematical model to document the extent of the funding. Frankly, that has something that we're trying to advocate at a national level. And you should be aware that there's a national reparations effort. It hasn't gone through Congress, hasn't been ruled on in the bill, but that's what we need. That's going to really generate the extent of the funding that we need as a country to address this. We're going to look at what we can do here. There's some immediate issues that we need to address. Even though the funding is small, it's mostly to say that, we want to just state, okay, there are some really critical issues. We know this is insufficient, but we just want to call out the attention. And then the rest will go into this funding, a larger pool, which, again, we're not there in terms of actually identifying the greater extent of the funding. I have a thought of an answer. I just don't want to give that now because there's so many variables in that.
Yeah, I understand.
Wait,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Now that my nerve and everything is kind of settled, and I've come into some questions.
Yes, sir.
You answered part of one. You did, Ms. Kaylee, and so did Dr. Ross. But as far as the money, because I've submitted requests, and I guess my question is, how is the committee placing the values on each individual? Mine is death. There is no amount of money that can make up for each one of the members of my family. But what kind of category would it be placed in? Me, I'm 86 years old. $1 billion wouldn't do me because I don't have anywhere near as much time in front of me as I got behind me. But what about my grandkids and my great-grandkids and my great-great-grandkids, which I have in my life today? What about the educational program that can be set up for them, that they can have homes and not have to build their life like I had to build my life? I have 4 engineering degrees, but they're in the drawer. So, and I'm fully retired medically. I guess I'm putting 3 or 4 questions into one. Is there any consideration? Because I submitted here right in my hand. I asked for $1 million a year from each parent and sibling from the date of their death to a biblical allotment of a full human life, which is 80 years. And the Bible doesn't say anything about life after 80 years, but my brother and I are the only two, my second brother, are the only 2 of us that passed 70. He died at 84, and here I am dying, where we all are at day. But
Sure.
how
I think that's a good question, and I'll tell you, I will give you where we are, and I will offer this as sort of a explanation and not an answer. And so, what we have decided as a commission is to set forth a cash payment process that is sort of equation based, that takes a look at individual factors like lineage, unique circumstances around neighborhoods and opportunities, but that equation isn't formalized. What we are saying is, by lack of resources provided to this commission, we were not able to do the level of sort of developing that equation in the time frame that we have had. And so with the establishment of a permanent commission, what they would be explicitly charged with is the sort of permanent establishment of that equation and those inputs to push out an output. Now, I think that what we've also wrestled with over time, just transparently, is the role that the city of St. Louis government plays inside of a larger anti-Black structure that is national in scope. And so how we negotiate terms and conditions for redress across what the United States of America is responsible for, what the state of Missouri is responsible for, what the city of St. Louis is responsible for. Inside of our scope, we were very limited to think about what the city of St. Louis is responsible for. And many of these moments of harm are intersectional in who is responsible, and some are uniquely specific to the city of St. Louis and actors inside of the city of St. Louis, like corporations and non-governmental entities. And so in scale, what I want to offer is I don't know the total amount. We read books like Darity who've said things like 800 is it 800 trillion or billion? $800 billion would be needed nationally to respond robustly to the conversation of reparations. Locally, we, one, don't even have a pot of money dedicated to reparations yet, and two, have to think about scale and scope. And so we are wrestling with the fact that there absolutely must be cash payment, and also not sure where that will come from, because we can't sort of guarantee that that will happen. We are a volunteer our sort of mandate is to put it in print, and then the city takes it up. And so the work to get to that sort of concluding amount that you're asking for isn't finished. It's sort of in progress. But what we are offering is that it should consider these things, and it should make special considerations for families like yours who are in places and experience specific harm by virtue of where you lived and the decisions that were made to remove harm your family. And those things together would produce a number, but we don't have that number.
Well, actually it was a conglomeration of the mayor and the federal government.
Exactly.
And if you consider the military government, federal government, in the testing of war materials, and they tested it. I live 3433 Pine Street, just like 10 blocks from here, and by faith, our home is on that monument that the Great Rivers Greenway had, that map monument. My home is on there because my home is right at Teresa and Pine Street. And I didn't realize how the Fox Theater, I know St. Louis University was the enemy, was the real perpetrator of the whole situation. Yeah. And yeah, Raymond R. Tucker was.
So we really have to address the National Reparations Commission. I mean, we need someone to really address your true concerns from all the entities that you just mentioned, military, national, and all those. So we just need a lot more support at the national level to really produce the amount of funding necessary to really make appropriate compensation to you and all the extensive harm that you've suffered. And we all have to get on that bandwagon and advocate not just what we're doing here in St. Louis. We have to advocate for national reform, a National Reparations Commission to truly make this all real for all of us.
Yeah. And this is why we sort of start the whole section off by saying everything in this recommendation could be done, and it would remain insufficient for what Black people have endured in this country.
Right.
And so the work, right, is that it should still happen though. That's not an excuse not to do it because we couldn't do it at scale. It still is on the city. We still hold the city very much accountable for decisions. Mill Creek was raised by a local proposition that went to the vote, that was funded by people, corporations, endorsed by local actors to remove an entire community and build what is now the Central Corridor. The city of St. Louis has to be responsible for that. They can't punt the ball to the White House, and the White House can't punt the ball to City Hall in St. Louis. Both have to repay for their portion of harm. And so we are trying to figure out how to do that. We are trying to figure out how to recommend that they do that, because all we have is recommendations. If I could make it happen, I'd go wherever the bank is and make it happen. But I don't actually have the strike of the pen to make that part happen, which is why we're delivering the recommendations to say, that, yeah, we know that this will not deliver complete redress to Black families in St. Louis, and it's an appropriate and necessary start.
So, sir, well, I want to make sure that there are no other comments. You can take a seat so we can have others come to the podium.
Well, I wasn't finished with my question. I had another question.
Sir, we do have a time limit. Okay. Are there other questions?
I feel as though I'm one of the most critical families involved in
Yes,
it.
sir. We agree, but we have to give time to other people in the audience.
Is there anyone else who wanted to give statement? You did? Did you want to give statement? Okay.
I just wanted to help you out with something. As far as the dollar amount on a national scale, we have broken down, and when I say we, I mean the Foundational Black American, the B1 establishment. We are broken down, if there are 43 million foundational Black Americans across the United States, then the figure that we would need to start at would be $20 trillion, which breaks down to $5,000 a month for 5 years. At that 5-year point, that's when we come back to the table and we make a new contract for the next 5 years. Now, that's for the monetary. Now, the question that I do have is, this commission has taken 18 months to get to this point. And now you're talking about another commission to get together to do another study or to get together and do some more talking. Now, does it take this long for when the immigrants come here? Does it take that long for them to get compensation, to get housing, to get everything that they need? Does it take this amount of time for any other peoples that are in need to get their just due? And if not, why is it taking so damn long for us?
Hold on.
There is someone behind you.
Right, someone else.
Yes.
I don't mind your question, but I mean, they're shutting me down. I have a lot of information.
Surely you do. I say. This, I just want to send out a message to the citizens of St. Louis who are directly impacted by this. Now it's time for us to get with our aldermen, get with our public servants, and present what you think is best in these recommendations and get their reactions and see how far they're willing to take this. And based on that, we're going to see how willing we are to vote for them. And that's a call to action to all of St. Louis. I hope that we all think that this is important enough to go ahead and engage in do our civic duty and engage our aldermen. And I want to commend the mayor for impaneling this through an executive order. It's a bold move. So now it's time for the citizens to do our part. Because I know we get frustrated with the process, and I know other groups, historically, all other groups have been put before us. So we still fighting that fight, but now it's time I think the commission has, like they say, they did the best that they could. So let's take what they presented, take the most impactful parts of it, take it to your aldermans, and let's get it done as a citizenry. I appreciate y'all.
Definitely not gonna get done with voting in
Are there any other statements, questions?
Okay, sir. So this is what we'll do. Come to the mic. So it's 7:25, and I know that you have I want to first say we are deeply aware of your story. You have shared it with us over the last 18 months, which is a very vulnerable story to share. And also, we want to make space for you to give remarks and also honor the process that we've been inside of for 18 months. So we would like to give you 5 more minutes. But then at that point,
Would you like to ask me questions about?
I don't have questions to,
No, nobody on the committee have any questions, because I've submitted many
yeah,
papers.
we've read them, we've taken them in, they've informed the report.
Okay.
It is in part because of, like, I will say this on behalf of the report working group, it is in part your testimony, Ms. Gwynn's testimony, several members who are living residents of Mill Creek Valley, that part of the recommendation is to have a standalone variable for sites of erasure like Mill Creek. And so we have taken your story in, and we have tried within the bounds and confines that we are able to honor not just your story, but the many families who experienced the testing that your family experienced the premature death that your family experienced, and seek to try to honor that inside of saying that there are special circumstances that require special redress in the work of delivering reparations in this inside of the city of St. Louis. And so I want to say that. So I don't have any questions, but we do want to give you the floor for a few more minutes, if that's okay, before we end the meeting.
It's fine. I do know that I'm not alone.
I know.
Yeah, so I'm not a selfish person in this situation. I'm just one of the most critical persons in the situation, because 13 members of my family. I'm the only one left in my family. My family is completely wiped out. But I was wondering if there were some kind of ways that the committee could begin to press the idea of setting up, like I mentioned earlier. I don't have much time. I'm sick now, but can things be set up for my great grandkids? A standard, some sort of standard thing for their education, or ahead. I got a picture of them. Plus, I have a copy of the form of reparations in the country, whereas blacks have none. Period. Even the indigenous, which I am indigenous. I lost, wasn't able to get jobs because of I'm Choctaw Cherokee on my mother's side, Blackfeet and Crow on my father's side, and there is no African in it. So they even like, I'm like Smokey Robinson. If you go to Africa right now as a black man, you won't even be recognized. So I mean, it's just one of the facts of the world. But blacks have no -0 reparations in this country for a lot of different things, for slavery, for a whole lot of different things. So, and as far as monetary is concerned, and I have that volume. I have that, and the weight game. The military is hurry up and wait. I figure that they're waiting until I'm gone, because this reparation program started in 21 when I started it with Barbara Martin, with Gwen Moore in the Mill Creek Valley Commemorative Committee. They did fine with taking away the Mill Creek Valley, because we didn't have any choice. And most did not go west. Most went to Pruitt-Igoe, which was built for the excavation of the black people. And it wasn't all black. It was 98% black, 2% Caucasian. So they moved to, some of them moved to Pruitt-Igoe also. And then it continued because it was a fatal attempt that backfired. They thought that they could get rid of the people in the mill, make them move, and air wouldn't blow the DDT and Agent Orange down. Now, they've paid the military. I was Vietnam also, Korea and Vietnam. But I wasn't up under Agent Orange in Vietnam. I was up under Agent Orange before I ever got there, which was right here in Mill Creek Valley. Well, a drop of water drive a hole through steel if it continues to drop, and that's that's what I'm doing. I don't have but a breath left, and I'm using it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We want to give closing remarks to the commission since this is our last time together. We'll start down with you, Professor Cunningham.
Well, thank you once again. It was really powerful to hear from you, as it always has been. And you know, I know we've been taking notes and listening hard on things that you've said tonight. We also know that we're reaching a really critical point. You know, I think all of us take it seriously that we've been working for a long time to get to this point. You know, and this is something that deserves to be dealt with as quickly as possible. The next stage, which involves the community in general in terms of advocating and exerting pressure, but also the idea of having a permanent committee is not necessarily to create endless study of this issue, is to really create a basis for implementation. You know, so there's accountability and there's transparency, and it can't just be put on a shelf and there's nobody charged with working on it. And so we hope that is the case. We expect that's the case. I know we're going to work hard to ensure that's the case, but we also appreciate being able to work with you all. So thanks once again.
You know, my comments kind of go to just some questions that were raised about how do you activate the responsibility for reparations beyond local? And so my mind kind of thinks like an attorney. So just say somebody sues you, right? And you're the defense attorney. There's this theory by if there's another party that's also possibly responsible, you join them. So reparations at a local level is part of a local movement. And so by what this report does and the recommendations is it sets up this permanent body, but there's this potential here where you get Evanston, you get Durham, you get St. Louis, and once these municipalities accept responsibility for their part, there's the joinder where our legislative bodies pass they pass a movement and say, hey, we acknowledge this, but we're also petitioning our state and our local government to responsibility. So I see kind of like a framework by which that can happen. It doesn't really provide conclusion, but I'm just kind of theorizing right now. And then your question about how do you take care of your family, your descendants, in terms of your reparation proceeds. And so one of the things that the recommendations provided for is support, financial support for how do you administer that, right? Because it does become this thing where you have estate issues and trust issues, and so hopefully the fund will provide support for administration. So like in your absence, when you move on, perhaps you have another 20 years on this planet, but there will be an estate for your family.
Kind of the point of, I need your
Right. So no.
But I mean that, and we need to move on.
Right. So I didn't want to get into the weeds in that, but just a couple of thoughts that I just wanted to throw out as we wrap up our work to just shine some light on how this can continue to breathe beyond that. But I thank you for your engagement. I thank everyone for your engagement tonight.
Yeah, I simply want to say thank you all for being here and offering your insight. When you do this kind of work, sometimes there are things that you don't recognize as a committee, and we have to do further work on. And so just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, I just would like to extend deep gratitude to all the members of the community who have been a part of this process with us for 18 months. And part of the reason we got to 18 months is because we felt a year was insufficient, and we needed more time to really sit inside of a story. You can very well tell this story of St. Louis through race and the experiences of people from Dre Scott all the way down to Vondera Myers and Mike Brown. And the experiences of families between those moments are endless, and deeply felt in the soil, in the air, and everything between in the city. I consider it a complete honor to be trusted to serve as chair of this commission. And as this commission sunsets, my commitment to the work of reparations does not end, and I hope yours does not either. It will take deep advocacy, deep organizing to force a city that has long ignored the racial realities to do something about it. And that's just not on one person, that's on an institution that has been built on top of anti-Blackness, that has relied on anti-Blackness to ensure business goes how they want it to go. And so I'm very grateful to this commission, very grateful to the working group that has been a part of this report, all the contributors, the Missouri Foundation for Health, the people who helped make this report possible. I want to state that this is a volunteer role, and I wish it needed to be paid. It needed a full-time team behind it to get us to this point at an earlier state. And I feel very committed to the work of seeing this report through to completion, and also advocating that these recommendations become reality. And I'm grateful to spend this time with you all and look forward to ways that we'll see each other in the community going forward.
Thank you. I just want to real briefly talk about the question from the audience about how long does it take. Well, I grew up in the civil rights era in Memphis, and Dr. King asked that same question: how long? And so it will take a demand, a constant demand, and an ability to really endure all the problems of delays and incomparable delays. But we just have to be long suffering. We just have to continue to demand. And so, yes, it will take time. But on this stage are people who have that commitment, that deep passion to stay and do this fight for the long haul. So yes, sir, it has taken time, but you're hearing tonight of a deep commitment to make it happen as much as we can make it happen. Thank you so much.
All right, well, Will Foster here again. Just want to thank everyone for coming out. Once again, I want to thank the commission for their work on this draft. And I'm very optimistic for what's to come in the future.
Thank you all again. And I also want to just briefly touch on the comment that was made about another committee from a commission. There are so many efforts that are taking place across the country, and so collectively will be the most impactful. And I think that it is an absolute must that a committee is formed, and that committee is intentionally in connection with those other committees and commissions and task force as well. So thank you all for sticking with us and continuing to hold us accountable. We've gotten emails, calls, and such. And as we continue this work, to hold those who are positioned after us as well accountable. So thank you all.
Okay, I'll be brief because I know it's late. But one of the things when I opened my remarks and I was giving kudos to my fellow commissioners, and I left out a very important part of this process, and that was the public testimony. One of the things that we did in preparation for this report is that we did go through all those months of public testimony and reread and looked at it and examined it and parsed it. And that was included in our recommendations and is included in this report. And I just want you to know that those voices, your voices are important. The brother that asked about, what the public can do, and I think it's the people that came to these public meetings are model. They came, they made their voices heard, and like Delishay said, they held us accountable. They weren't always polite about it, but they weren't supposed to be. That's their job. That's our job, is to hold our public officials accountable. Caleb mentioned about these elections coming up. These people want to stay in office. And sometimes we don't recognize the power that we have. We have the power to determine whether or not they're in office. And they can listen to us. And if they don't listen to us, then they should accept the consequences. So I just want to reemphasize that.
Thank you. Ms. Gwen Moore. The last word being Ms. Gwen Moore makes so much sense. This is our last meeting. We're still going to meet internally, but this is our last meeting. And so again, thank you to everyone who made this possible. Big thank you to STL TV, who has been all over the city with us, making things happen. It does take real staff to stand up a volunteer coalition, so thank you for that. And can we have a final motion to close the last reparations meeting? And a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.